1 second here. You got it. Oh, okay.
I got this. Hello, everybody. I want you to listen very, very carefully to what I'm going to say right now. If you don't remember anything else that I say this week, I want you to remember this. Can you do that? It's easy. God loves you very, very much. Before you were ever born, He planned for you. He put you in the family He wanted you to be in. He put you right where He wanted you to live. And He has a beautiful plan for your life. And remember that as we go through Joseph, as you see how he developed his plan for Joseph. So let's review just a little bit. How many brothers did Joseph have? 11. You're right. Where was Joseph? Was he the first or the second or the third? Or?
He was the 11th.
He was the 11th. You're right. Who was his little brother? Benjamin. Right. Now, how many of you think that that just happened that way? Do you think that it just happened? That he became the 11th one? Why wasn't he the first one?
Because God had a plan.
Right. God had a plan. He couldn't be the first. He had to be the 11th because God had a plan for him. And he was his daddy. His daddy just loved him so much. And you know, Bible does, you know, a lot of things Bible doesn't say, and we have to use our imagination. So I really believe that Jacob probably set it on his knee and talked to him and taught him, because all those big brothers, they were out guarding the sheep or doing something, and he just loved this little boy to death because he was, whose child was he? Whose child was he? Yeah.
God's child.
Who?
God's child.
Yeah, who was his mother? Who was his mother? Rachel. She was the beautiful Rachel. What about those other 11? Who was the, let's see, who hasn't said anything yet? Ugly Leah. Ugly Leah. Did y'all know that was ugly Leah last night?
Yes.
Well, she was the ugly Leah, and she had 10, and he just wanted a baby boy from Rachel, and finally he got her, and he just loved that little boy, and he'd sit him on his lap, and I'm sure he taught him about God and taught him about the 10 Commandments that you're learning now, and taught him how to follow God, but here we are. You know, see, here was Leah. This is Leah over here. Be sure I got this right. Leah with all these babies, one right behind another, boy after boy after boy. And poor old Rachel, she was so sad because she didn't have any little boy. And then, you know, she had this little boy, and he loved that little boy. He just loved little boy. Isn't that sweet?
Yeah, he looks so cute.
Oh, he looks like me.
Love him.
But Jacob loved little Joseph, and he petted him, and he spoiled him. And you know what? Then he just thanked God for him. He thanked God for this little boy because he wanted him so bad. And then here he is. Here's Joseph. He's getting a little bit bigger now. Here's Joseph. And here's all of his brothers. And here's Rachel, and she hasn't had Benjamin yet. She's getting ready to have Benjamin. So now we're going to have 12 boys. But we're going to have 2 that named Joseph and Benjamin. And he loved Joseph. And he made him this pretty coat. Do you think those big brothers of his were jealous when they saw him with that coat on?
Yes.
Because, you know, the Bible says that he loved him more than he did all those others because they were children of that ugly Leah. And he wanted one with Rachel, and he was so happy. that he's got this little boy, and now he's getting to be a big boy. He was about 16, 17 years old, and he had a dream. Do you know what a sheaf is? Who knows what a sheaf is? What's a sheaf?
In the old times, they get a bunch of, like, I don't know what it's called, but they put it in a bunch of, like, they make it kind of like a hay bale.
Uh-huh. You know, when I was a kid, I can remember hearing stories about this, and I had no idea what a sheaf was. But a sheaf is like see, here's the bundles, like their grain or their wheat or their corn, and they would tie them up in bundles like that. Well, Joseph had a dream, and he dreamed that his stood right straight up. And he dreamed that all these others, there were 11 of these others, and he dreamed that they all just bowed way down to him. And you know, he had to tell his brothers, didn't he? You think he gloated over that? Told them his dream, and they says, you little, this Bible doesn't say this what he says, but I think he probably says, you little spoiled brat. Do you really believe that we're going to bow down to you? No way, we're not going to bow down to you. You're just a spoiled brat, and you're just no good. They didn't like him. So then he went back and he had another dream. And at that time, he dreamed that the sun and the moon and the stars all bowed down to him. And then they thought, oh, the sun and the moon were his mom and his dad. And then they said, now, what are you dreaming? You think your parents even are going to bow down to you? You're nothing but a spoiled brat. And all you do is brag about dreams, and they hated him. They did not like Joseph. And so the big boys, they'd go out to take care of the sheep, you know, and guard the sheep and what the sheep were doing and working. But little Joseph and Benjamin stayed home.
That's all. That's
What? They stayed home. So one day Jacob called Joseph in, because now he's a big teenager, and he said, I want you to go down there and hunt your brothers and find out how they're doing. Of course, he was a bit of a tattletale. He'd find out what they were doing, and he'd come tattle on them. But this time he told him, go down there and find your brothers and find out how they're doing and come back and tell me. So he started out. See, here he comes with his coat, all his pretty coat, and his brothers were out there, and they saw him coming, and they said, there comes that dreamer. They didn't like him. In fact, they hated him. And so they were sitting there and said, let's get rid of him. Let's kill him. Then he will go with that silly dreams he keeps dreaming. He thinks we're going to bow down to him. And yet we're going to bow down to him? Nowhere we're going to do that. And he says, well, let's just kill him. So they said, okay, let's just kill him. But then Reuben, he kind of felt sorry for him. And there was a big pit there, you know, like a well, but there was no water in it. Probably somebody had started to dig a well and found out there wasn't no water, so there's no use in digging it, can't get water out of it. So I don't know that, but it was a pit, a hole in the ground. So let's just throw him in there. And Reuben said, let's don't kill him, because we got that on our conscience. We'll have to think about that all our lives. Let's don't kill him. Let's just throw him in that well. So they said, okay, let's throw him in that well. So they yanked his pretty coat off, tore up his clothes, put him down, and Reuben thought they're going to put him down in that well, that pit, and then after a while, I'm going to sneak in there, and I'm going to pull him back out, and I'm going to send him back home to his daddy. So Reuben wanted to save him, but they put him down in that pit. And here again, the Bible doesn't say, and then all his brothers, they threw him down in the pit, and they just, after they threw him in the pit, they just sat down over there and just ate their food. Do you think that was nice?
yeah.
Now, the Bible doesn't say what Joseph was doing, but what do you think? If somebody threw you down in this dark pit and you can't get out, they've yanked your pretty coat off of you, and you know they hate you, what would you be doing? Isaac, what would you be doing? You what? Yeah, so what are you going to do just sitting there? Jeff, what would you do? Oh, right. What would you do?
I would like yell out because so Joseph was Jacob's favorite, right?
Right.
Well, I think that he would yell out and his dad would hear him.
Oh, but his daddy was a long way away. He'd gone quite a ways down there, and his dad couldn't hear him. What would you do if you were in that pit?
I would save him, but everywhere.
But I'm saying, what if you were the one that was in the pit? What would you do?
I would pray and try to get out.
I think he tried to get out. I think he probably tried to get out. But you know what I think? I agree with Jeff. I think I would have been crying. I think it was please get me out. It's dark down here. I'm scared and I'm hungry. And you're going to leave me here to die. You can't leave me here to die. And I think he'd been trying to get out and he can't get out. It's too high and he's climbing. He can't get out. And I think he was crying. I mean, he was not a big adult. He was like a 17-year-old boy. He was just a teenager. And I think he was crying and begging them. And then they just sat over there eating their meal. They didn't care, didn't leave it alone. Let's see what's going to happen to that dreamer. But see, Reuben wasn't there. Now, I don't know where Reuben went. He'd gone off somewhere. So Reuben thought he was going to sneak back over there and go pull him out of that pit. In the meantime, these traders, they were people that would go up and then get, all these spices and different things and put them on their little donkeys or camels or whatever they did. Then they would take them down to Egypt and then sell it. So they looked up and they saw them coming by. And one of them says, hey, let's pull him out of that pit and let's just sell him. That way, we don't kill him. But we'll sell him and they'll take him down to Egypt and we will never see him again. To last to him. We will never, ever, ever see him again.
Is he in the pit?
They're going to pull him out of the pit because they want to sell him now. And they says, we'll take his pretty coat, all that coat that we yanked off of him, and we'll kill a goat, and we'll put blood on that goat, and on that coat, and we'll tear it up some, and we'll take it back to their daddy, and said, we'll tell him, look at theirs. And he says, is this a coat that belongs to Joseph? And he cried, and he cried, and he cried. And he said, I'm going to cry until I die. I'm going to keep crying. I'm just going to mourn forever because his favorite son, he thought was dead. Is he now some wild beast, some wild animal out there has torn him up and has eaten him, and I'll never see him again. And he cried, and he cried, and he cried. Now, what do y'all think? Do you think this was all in God's plan? Mm-hmm. It was. It doesn't sound very good, does it?
No.
You think he was down in that pit? You think it was because God had a plan? Yes, because God had a plan. We don't know what it is yet, do we? But he had a plan. And so they took him, they took Joseph. These traders did it. They tied him up, and I'm sure he was crying. They're taking him off to a different country, all the way down to Egypt. And I have a feeling all the way down there he was crying, please let me go home. Please turn me loose. Please let me go home. And so I'm sure he cried and cried. But they got down there to Egypt. And y'all know what a slave is, don't you? We all know what a slave is. You get somebody that, like if I say, well, I'm going to buy this guy. I'm going to buy him. Come on up here. I'm buying you. And I bought him. I paid somebody. I paid his parents. And he belongs to me now. And what I tell him to do, he has to do it. He can't run away and go home. He can cry all he wants to. I've paid for it. So just like if you buy a horse or a dog or a cat or whatever, you can buy it and then it belongs to you. So it's like I bought him and now he belongs to me. And he will do what I say. If he doesn't do what I say, I will whip him and whip him hard. and he wants to run away. He can't run away because he belongs to me. I paid for it. So they took him down, put Joseph down to Egypt. You know, what they would do is they'd have like a platform here, and they'd stand these people up they were selling, you know, and these wealthy people that wanted a slave, they'd look at him and they'd, oh yeah, well, and then Potiphar, he was Pharaoh's chief of the guards. I say he was head of the Secret Service. But he was high, he was, you know, a big government guy, and so he no doubt had a lot of money, and he thought he'd find him a slave. So he comes along and he looks there. Here's Joseph standing there. He's all tied up, you know, got where he can't run away. And Potiphar, he looks him over, and he said, "Boy, look at this guy. He's strong, and he'll be able to work for me for a long time because he's young. It'll be a long time before he gets too old to work, and I can work him, and I can get a lot of work out of him." And so he thought, "I'm going to buy this guy." So Potiphar bought him. Took him home with him. Why did he do that? Because what? Because why?
Because it's God's plan.
God had a plan. Right. God had a plan. It doesn't sound like a good plan, does it? Because you know, how many times you think...
I know it's his plan. I think he's gonna run away.
Well,
No, he didn't run away. He couldn't run away. I'm sure he wanted to, but he couldn't run away.
I think he's gonna become so good that he might become king.
Well, you're getting close to it because, see, he was very smart. His father had taught him a lot. And, you know, he did not know what God's plan was. All he knew was that he had these weird dreams. And he's down here and he's probably thinking, forget that. Those, don't raise your hands now. He probably said, those dreams aren't going to happen because I'm a slave. My brothers are way up there in another country. They're not going to bow down to me now. There's no way. But he kept, I've got a dream. I dreamed this thing and I thought it was from God. Maybe it wasn't. And so he gets sold to Potiphar. And Potiphar took him home. He put him to work. You know, and he had the people out working in the gardens and working in the fields and stuff. And he got to watching Joseph. Because he thought, why, that guy's smart. He's honest. These slaves aren't honest. They could steal something, they're going to steal it. But not Joseph. Joseph didn't steal. He said, and he thought, he's smart, he knows how to do finances and all this stuff. So Potiphar invited him into his house to work inside the house. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? Because he's a favored slave. Because he's got a good job inside the house. He can't run away. He can't go back home. But at least he's being treated well. Potiphar liked him. And so Potiphar would say, okay, you take care of this. And then later Potiphar said, oh, you're doing such a good job. You just take care of all my finances. Then pretty soon, Potiphar had put him in charge of everything in his house. He was still a slave. But now here he is in Potiphar's house. He says, there's no way I'm going to get back home to my daddy. It's going to be right here forever. Why do you think he was sold? Why do you think Potiphar bought him? Because God had a plan. All the time God had a plan. Joseph didn't know what the plan was, but God had a plan. And to sell it right then, right at that time, and it was in Potiphar's house. But you know, Potiphar, he had this beautiful, beautiful wife. Potiphar had this beautiful wife, and she was so beautiful. And she got to looking at Joseph. And she thought, wow, that guy's good looking. He's strong. He's healthy. He's handsome. And she liked him. And so Potiphar goes away for a few days. He would travel, what he was doing, and he was gone. And Potiphar's wife would look at Joseph and she'd think, oh, I want him to be my boyfriend. Could she be his boyfriend?
No.
Why?
Because God had a plan.
Because what? God had a plan, but why couldn't she be his boyfriend?
Because Pharaoh or he would get mad.
Yeah, well, she was married. You don't supposed to go get a boyfriend when you're married, are you? So she was married. And you're right, Potiphar, he was very angry. But so she'd flirt with him, and she'd make eyes at him, and he would try to ignore her. And she kept after him because she was kind of a bad woman, and she really, really wanted him to be her boyfriend. And he would try to avoid her. She'd come around because they were both in the house, He'd go somewhere, and there she was, everywhere. Look, there's this beautiful woman making eyes at him and wanting him. Now let me ask you this. Could he have done it? Really, could he have done it?
No.
He could have. He could have thought, nobody's going to know it. Potiphar's out of town. Nobody's in the house but me and this beautiful woman. Nobody will ever know it. But what would have happened? He would have been out of God's plan, wouldn't he? But he didn't do it. But, he came up to her, and, she was bringing him, and she tried to get a hold of him. She's going to hug him. She really wanted to hug him. She wanted him to hug her, and he was trying to get away. He was trying to get away, and she grabbed a hold of his coat, and he just turned it loose and ran. Because God had a plan. And that was not part of it. And so he ran. And this wicked woman, she started screaming and screaming, oh, he's trying to force himself on me. I didn't want to be his girlfriend, but he came after me and it was all him. He's over here, he was trying to hug me. And look at that, here I yanked his coat off of him. Here's proof. She lied, didn't she? So why did that happen?
She didn't want to get in trouble with his husband.
With her husband.
She only did that because she had a crush on Joseph, right? But when he came back home, she didn't want to get in trouble, so she used his jacket and made proof that he wanted to like her.
She was afraid that Joseph would tell the truth. But why did this happen to Joseph? Because God had a plan. God had a plan. Then it had to happen right then. Joseph didn't know the plan, but God had a plan. And Potiphar did come home. And she said, that man you put in this house, he forced himself on me. And see, here's the proof. I screamed, and I grabbed his coat off of him, and he ran away, and Potiphar was so angry. See, Potiphar should have called Joseph in and said, tell me what happened, shouldn't he?
Yes.
But he didn't. He was so angry.
He believed the girl, but the girl was telling a lie.
Yep, she was telling a lie, Potiphar grabbed him up and stung him into the dungeon, which would be a jail, but it was like down in a dungeon. Put him in prison. Okay, now he's in prison. Why is he in prison?
Because part of God's plan.
Yes, right, you're catching on. Because God had a plan, and he had to be in prison right then. He had to go to prison right at that time, and God had a plan. But I'm sure Joseph wondered what in the world now was happening to me. I was doing fine. I got me a good job to do, and I'm treated well, and I can't run away and go home, but at least I've got to, they're treating me fine. They don't beat me like they do the other slaves and things. And now he's in jail. He probably says, didn't I have those dreams? Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe my brothers aren't going to ever bow down to me. I'll never see my brothers again, and I'll never see my daddy again. And so they threw him in jail. And so tomorrow night we're going to see what happens to him in jail.